Are you living the divine life? Many of us are not, and there just might be a few things keeping us from this. Welcome to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. In our program, you'll learn to use the tools that have been given to you to make changes that you need, and by doing so, come one step closer to living that divine life. Now, here is your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson.
Namaste. So earlier this year, 2013, several deaf people that I know were asking about what exactly I believe, why I believe what I believe, and how all of this came about. So in April, I did a video of me signing my basic background or foundation of how and why I believe as I do. Well, since that time, several people who are not fluent in or not as well versed in American Sign Language have asked the same question. And basically they saw the video and they asked, Ray, I don't understand what you're talking about in the whole sign language thing. Can you do a version where you're explaining it verbally? Ta-da! That's what this version is. So, okay, let's start with, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and grew up in a Christian household, though we didn't go to church. Not sure if my father ever went to church, at least while I was, since the time I had been born. He may have gone when he was a child or something, I don't know. So we weren't really an avid church-going family. However, the Bible was present, and I do know that my parents prayed, or at least I know that my mom prayed, and I do know that my father read the Bible. When he was in jail, I know that he read the Bible forward and backwards and forwards and right side up and upside down, and read commentaries on various scriptures and from biblical scholars and all kind of stuff. So I know my father was versed in the Bible. However, nothing was formally taught to me. I mean, I didn't get any, this is how you pray, this is the church we go to, or I didn't get any of that. My basic Christian foundation, my basic Christian beliefs or foundation came from three primary sources, all three of which were TV evangelists. Rex Humbard and the Humbard family, Oral Roberts and his son, 700 Club and Pat Robertson. Without going into too much detail, is it no wonder that I developed a self-hating, condemning, judgmental attitude towards myself, life, and everyone else? I mean, with this as my foundation, because I don't want to get into what I currently think about. So this was my foundation. And one of the main things that I got from my father referencing this and his studies of the Bible was my father taught me, just because these men say this particular thing, how do you know that what they're telling you is true? You're taking their word for it, but why? You don't know them. You don't know anything about them. You don't know what's motivating them. You don't even know if they really believe what they're saying they believe. Let's talk about the Bible. Where did it come from? Who wrote it? All these pages, where did it come from? Good question, Dad. I really hadn't thought about it. So from what my father told me, I developed a sort of CSI kind of mindset where I now started to investigate. I wanted to know more. And one thing that he told me to do was start observing these three. Listen to what they're saying, watch what they're doing, and eventually you'll start noticing certain things. So that's what I did. I started listening and watching with a critical eye, not just take, here, accept. It was now, this is what you say. What is that based on? Okay, this is what you said, but this is what you're doing. Well, you said this last week, but now you're saying this week. Those two don't match. So what I noticed was certain inconsistencies, which did nothing for me except raise more questions. It made me want to go beyond these three experts and start investigating more. So the nerd in me started going to the library more frequently. I started asking questions of anybody that I know who believed in the Bible, spiritual people, religious people, ministers. A friend of mine, he and his family were Catholics, and I had gone to a mass with them one time, and I don't remember the specific reason. There was some special, it may have been when the Catholic school that he and his brothers went to, it may have been their graduation from the middle school there, and the church was having a mass/graduation thing. That may have been it. But nonetheless, I went. I knew nothing about Catholics. I knew nothing about, I mean, I've seen the churches. I've never been in one. So we get there, and we go in, and I watch them dip in the water, tap, tap, tap. Okay, I'm monkey see, monkey do. So, but then I'm sitting there, and I'm listening, and I'm watching, and I'm noticing, okay, both of these are Christians, and I knew enough to know that Christianity, the way I was understanding it, came from Christianity of Catholics. You know, there was Catholicism, then the Protestant Reformation, and they separated because this group of people were protesting against this group of people and what they believed in, and they set up their own belief system. But there were certain similarities and certain things that were dissimilar, and it did nothing but make me even more curious. So once again, hit the books and asking questions, and I would find priests and ask them, so Your Holiness or Father, I don't know what to call you, but I have a question for you. And I asked them questions, and most of the time they answered my questions, and I asked the nuns, well, why do you wear a habit? And why this? And why the rosary? And why that? And why did they break away from you? And why? So this goes on for several years, and I'm questioning what I believe and why I believe what I believe. And then I start studying martial arts. And in studying the martial arts, I'm introduced to Eastern mysticism and Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism. I'm introduced to all of that, Shintoism. And now I'm really like, whoa, this is like almost night and day for where I was then. This is like night and day. I'm not getting this. So I read and study more of that. Well, somewhere around this time, I'm mid-high school, late high school, and I'm studying ninjutsu and kung fu. And I'm finding things that are similar, but then the things that are not similar. So I'm really confused, because now there's the part of me that says, if I do that, it makes me a devil worshiper. And so I don't want to do that, but there's something in that that resonates as being truthful. And there's something in this that resonates as truthful, but then there's this whole other side that resonates as, no, let this part go. But I couldn't. I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to be damned and hellfire and whatnot. Especially since there were certain family members who were religious leaders, pastor, who stopped speaking to me because of my martial arts background and whatnot. And they also reiterated that I was a devil worshiper. So I really wanted to focus on this and let that go. But once again, it still resonated. And my father, being who my father was, he said, why? Keep reading this and keep reading this. And at some point you'll discover and find out who you are and how it relates to this and what you believe. Don't simply do this because you're afraid of what this says or what they say. Don't give in to fear. So more and more years go by, and I'm reading and I'm studying and I'm trying to figure out what I believe and why do I believe what I believe. Because that was a big one. If you believe this, why do you believe it? If you believe that, why do you believe it? Because ultimately it boils down to a choice. No one forces you to believe what you believe. Even if you're raised in a Christian household, at some point when you become a rational thinking adult, you choose if you want to continue doing that or not. Many people do it when they go from being meat eaters to being vegetarians or vegan. You're raised in a household that eats pork and beef and chicken. As an adult, you say, I no longer want to do that. It's not healthy for my body, or I'm more of a humanitarian and I want to live an animal cruelty-free life, so I'm no longer going to even eat animal products at all. And I'm going to become vegan. This is how you were raised. You change to this, and then later you may have changed to that. It's choice. Well, religion and spirituality is the same thing. You're not forced to be Muslim or Buddhist or practicing the Kabbalah. You make choices as you reach a certain level of maturity, and then you live from there. So here I am in college. At the time I was in Carlow College, which is a Catholic school and predominantly women's school. So being one of the few men who was actually a Carlow student, I had to take the Carlow requirements, which was a women's studies course and religion courses. If I recall, I was only required to take 2, but because I was so into this religion thing, I ended up taking more. And I could have minored in it, but that's another story. So I take Introduction to the Old Testament, taught by a nun. Introduction to the New Testament, taught by a nun. The human experience and God, or human experience of God, and others. And more questions start to pop up. So in these classes, I'm required to do an exegesis of biblical scripture and, do a more in-depth study of what is this scripture talking about? Who was speaking? Who wrote it? Who was it written to? And why? So as a result, I ended up going to speak to rabbis that okay, 3 steps back. So while I was in middle school, Reisenstein Middle School, I had a lot of Jewish friends. So I was introduced to the Jewish background or Jewish system of belief. And so now that I'm in Carlow, I have the opportunity to speak to, more on a spiritual level, to speak to some of the rabbis that I had met and some of the families that I knew about, okay, well, in Judaism, it says this in the Bible, in the Torah, it says this. What does this mean? And at some point I was introduced to the Kabbalah, but I didn't really grasp it or understand. It was too deep for me. But I was introduced to it. So through all of this, it started making me ask even more questions, because if Jesus himself was a Jew and he studied from the Torah, and the Old Testament is basically the book that the section of the Bible that the Jews adhere to. The New Testament, no, because for them Jesus is not the Messiah. So New Testament, blah. Old Testament, though, okay. Well, for those who are Christians, they include the Old Testament in there. And yet, how they practice things from the Old Testament and how Jews practice things from the Old Testament are very different. For example, for Jews, the Sabbath is Saturday. For Christians, the Sabbath is Sunday. I don't get it. I didn't know anything about Seventh-day Adventists back then. Okay, if you're following this book, and the book is based upon this and these people who created the book, and they say that the Sabbath is on Saturday, how did you change that? So follow me here. More and more questions, more and more questions. So I go on and I graduate from Carlow, and I'm still going, and Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and I met some teachers there. Flavia Zortia, love Flavia. She opened my eyes to things like creative visualization and mysticism, and all this stuff just kept on adding to the mix. Well, if I understand this and I understand that, but I don't understand how. Okay, back to Christianity for a hot second, and things referencing change. So Jesus is Jewish. He spoke Hebrew and the Aramaic, and yet his name, Jesus, isn't his birth name. Jesus, being a translation of his name, isn't his legitimate name. It's a translation of his name. So why do Christians refer to the Savior, the Messiah, by his translated name rather than the name that his mother and father and his siblings and neighbors, they didn't call him Jesus, they called him something else? Well, why don't we use that name? Yeah, there are some Christians that I've met who actually know what this name is, but there are so many who don't, and that boggles my mind that you have this entire religious thing built upon this man, and yet many of you don't even know his Aramaic or Hebrew name. That threw me into a whole new headspin of, wait a minute, that's not his name? What's his name? Oh, what, he didn't speak, whoa, what language did he speak? Then I wanted to start studying more about Aramaic and Hebrew and got into that. So fast forward many, many, many more years, and my son Kenny, if I'm not mistaken, I had already moved to Richmond, Virginia at this point. And I came back to Pittsburgh and was visiting my oldest son Kenny. And he had a brochure from the American Institute of Holistic Theology. And he basically said, I'm going to go to Hampton. Dad, this might be something you're interested in. So he gave it to me. And because he knows the kind of nerd that I am. And, you know, even if I didn't seek another degree, it's still learning more. So I read the, little manual, the brochure of the college, and I'm liking what it's offering. It was a variety of courses related to theology. So I contacted the admissions director, Beverly Love, and signed up. I wanted my Doctor of Divinity in Christian theology. I wanted to study more about this and get more. So there I am reading, because I went on ahead and enrolled, and I'm studying and I'm learning more about Christian theology, more of the background, the history, the foundation. And as a result, my belief system changed. My entire paradigm shifted. And I eventually ended up going from that into a more metaphysical view or perspective of Christianity and religion or theology, spirituality overall. And basically what that means is, rather than going with the surface meaning of what something is saying, rather than going with the actual words that are written on the page, there's the more metaphorical, the more concept-based rather than content-based meaning or understanding of stuff. For example, let's go with, well, let me take a pause for a moment, because I threw this out there in another video where I was talking about superheroes and Superman and Harry Potter or whatnot. If we look at any story, whether it's the story of Harry Potter or Star Wars and the hero's journey made famous by Joseph Campbell, and we understand that this is an archetype. He represents something. He may or may not be real. Like, he as a character is real. He as a person is not. However, what he symbolizes is real. And if we look to the meta meaning, the meaning beneath these words and these pictures, what does Superman represent? What does the archetype teach us? How to aspire to greatness, how to elevate ourselves, how to fly. Symbolically, okay, so here we are back at the Bible. Satan, the name Satan, deceiver, father of lies, the devil, that whole concept, one who is the opponent of or the accuser. So, symbolically speaking, the devil or Satan, Lucifer, when we have those thoughts of you're not good enough, you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, the ego, the Satan, is accusing us of being less than how great we are. Because when we realize that we are connected to, because we can't be not connected to God. God is all there is. God is everywhere present, all the time. And that's the whole omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, all of that, all of the omnis. It's not possible to go somewhere where God is not. So God is right here, both in me, moving through me, here as me, around me. God is everywhere. But there are those moments when that voice, the accuser, the father of lies, will pop in and try to convince me that I'm not something that I already am. Very similar how Satan showed up in the desert to woo Jesus, to convince Jesus of this. And despite his attempts, Jesus did not yield. Well, therein lies a lesson. Symbolically, metaphysically speaking, when the ego kicks in and tries to belittle me, make me feel less than, make me think less than, anything less than greatness. Because if I am made in the image and likeness of the divine, then there's no way that I could be small. That's why the Marianne Williamson poem, Our Greatest Fear, says, it is not our darkness that most frightens us. It is our light. Thinking how great we are scares the living out of us. Because to whom much is given, much is required. That scares us. It's easier to play small. It's easier to little yourself. Because you don't want to stand on a pedestal and have people come to you. It's so you fade in the background. Play small. Convince yourself that you're stupid, you're ugly. Because that's what I did. I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm no good, no one wants me, I'm not worthy. All of that for years and years and years and years. And so I get involved in, like I said, metaphysical, at that time, metaphysical Christianity as a whole. But then I start studying later, because I go from a Doctor of Divinity in Christian theology. I then, as an option, decided that I wanted to become ordained. Not because I wanted to preach or teach or anything, but I wanted to study more. And I felt that becoming ordained would give me the opportunity to go into this area of study where I may not have been able to do before. So I become ordained, become a Christian minister. Then I started studying more about metaphysics, and I got a doctorate in metaphysical science and metaphysical studies, and became a life coach, and got more into the denominations of New Thought, unity, religious science, and divine science, and started reading and studying more of those. And of those three, I felt more unity, religious science. And I keep practicing and studying and reading, and I feel that I'm a little bit more towards the religious science side, only because as an interfaith minister now, because I've also become an interfaith minister, co-ordained, I find that the interfaith is more towards religious science. Ernest Holmes pulled and gleaned from more places, whereas unity is the Church of Practical Christianity, which is fine. I'm still right there with unity, because it's still metaphysical Christianity. I also, as a metaphysical and interfaith minister, yes, I pull from Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism. I still glean and pull from any tradition around the face of this planet that speaks truth and resonates with me, I'm going to pull from. I'm not bound to or limited by one set of doctrine or one set of dogma. If I read this in Buddhism and that does not resonate with me where I am here now today, because it might tomorrow, but today this doesn't resonate with me, then I'll shelve it continue reading and studying what does resonate with me, revisit this at a later time and see, do I want it now? Does it resonate with me now, or does it still not resonate? I still read, and I now, because I'm a little bit more spiritually adept now, I'm reading and studying more about the Kabbalah and trusting and going into your intuition and being intuitive more. So yes, I pull from anything and everything, basically. If it speaks truth and it resonates and it is empowering and helping me to evolve and become more enlightening and awakening and part of my metamorphosis into becoming the fullness of all that I'm supposed to be, then that's what I'm going to do. So basically that's, in a long roundabout way, that's sort of what I believe now and why I believe what I believe. I do not believe in lack, limitation, scarcity. I do not believe in war. I do not believe in any of that. Those are choices. And I believe that if we become attuned to and strong spiritually minded mystics, all of this other stuff, we will see it for the illusion that it is. It will fade away, and harmony and peace and abundance and all of these things that are natural to the universe, to the galaxy, to all that is. These are the natural things that will become available to every single one of us. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or type something below in the little comment section, or, find me on Facebook and send me a message. If you're in the DC metro area and you want to know when I'm speaking, or if you would like me to come speak at your church or center or whatnot, feel free to get in touch with me. Email me, go to my websites, get in touch with me. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to chatting more. I look forward to sharing and imparting your knowledge to me and mine to you, and fellowship and breaking bread together. Until next time, be well, be blessed, and know that you are loved. Namaste.